Welcome to the Practice Growth Podcast today, Brian. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Marla. Thanks for having me. And this has been an exciting day so far. Many of you don't know, we're shooting this at around, 1:30, 2 o'clock. I've spent all morning here. You guys you guys have outdone yourself. This is a wonderful facility.
Well, thank you. And we're really appreciative of you coming in, especially I've known you for a long time. And you are not only a powerhouse in the physical therapy industry, you've been a clinician, you've owned a clinic. You also now have MEG Business Management, which is a billing platform and billing organization, as well as consulting and being nationally recognized as a coach and a consultant.
Yes. And that's how, meeting Mike and the whole team here 7 years ago, that's how the relationship started. Was I realized, helping people become better owners and better educated in how to succeed as owners, which we're going to get into, it came with this complement of a bundle of work that we never went to school for. You've been a therapist a long time. You've treated athletes yourself and in all different settings, and you've worked in different settings. And what do we all dislike the most? It's all the admin. So I'm sure we'll touch on some of that. And with today's technology and all the advancements, it is, in my opinion, the absolute best time to go into private practice for physical therapists right now. I think this is the best time in our history to actually make a big splash.
Yeah, and honestly, that's really what I'm here to talk to you about today, is to pick your brain and tell us a little bit about how to be a successful startup, and not just any startup, but one that goes from 0 to 1 to 5 practices and be able to grow successfully and quickly and scale. So would love to hear, just for anyone who doesn't know you, a little bit about your background and how this topic is near and dear to your heart, and how you even got into this.
Okay, so that's a good question. I think being a startup today is 10 times easier than it was when I got started. I graduated PT school in 92. I went to school up in Buffalo. And when I got out of school, I just wanted to be the best therapist I could be. You're an athlete. I know you're top level, top shelf performer as a gymnast. And, I went and played soccer over in Europe for some time and came back. And so I just had that intrinsic degree of ambition to want to be the best I could be at whatever I'm doing at the time. I remember working at National Car Rental. I wanted to wash the cars the best I could. That's a terrible job, washing rental cars. But you know what it's like. And so you come out of PT school, and I did 33 Con Ed courses out of PT school. I wanted to be the best manual therapist I could be. But then at some point, you realize that you're made of a DNA that I just can't exchange time for money for the rest of my life. And for people who can, that's totally fine. I think it could be a beautiful life because you have something else going on that you're passionate about, I'm sure. But for me, I was always passionate about physical therapy and always passionate about, you and I mean, heck, you're going to be at PPS giving 3 lectures, possibly. You know what it's like to be an educator. You feel like when you walk off that stage or you're done helping somebody, you're like, man, I've had an impact on that person for a lifetime. It's not just for the moment. So that's kind of been my history. If I need to put a thread through it all, it's about how can I give back to a populace or a group of people or a profession in a way that actually does some good for the lifetime of their journey in that profession, right? And so I've been devoted to that my whole life after starting my own business 5 years after working for somebody else and then getting to where I am today. But you know how it is today. Today is more than just, treat the patient and discharge the patient and find a new patient. So there's a lot more that goes into it. So yeah, my journey has been everything from private practice all the way on up to helping people succeed in private practice.
Yeah, and you said that now is easier time. So I'd love to know, why is now a good time? A lot of people say reimbursement is decreasing and admin struggles are increasing. PTs are hard to find. So why do you think it's a good time now to get into starting your own practice?
I think it's a great time to get into starting your own practice now more than ever for many reasons. Probably the one that comes to mind most is when I started, I thought, or all I observed in the environment at the time was you did everything. You did everything yourself. I ran my own Cat 5 cable in the wall. I painted the rooms. I set up the shop. I got my own server. I loaded my server. Microsoft did our own billing. And it was like, that's just what you did. You did everything. And fast forward 30 years now, been a therapist 30 years, it's not like that at all. As a matter of fact, almost no one goes that route. It's become so specialized because, heck, we don't even have, we had paper charts then, right? So You need an IT specialist for this. You need a compliance officer specialist for that. You need a billing specialist to do the billing. Not only that, you need an IVO authorization specialist. You need a patient front desk. I mean, the state of rehab report has over 40% of offices can't keep a front desk person more than 12 months because it's not a jack of all trades position that you can just keep somebody in for a very long time. You have to separate out some of those roles or responsibilities into their specialized fields, if you will, like patient registration and tracking and authorization and demographics is very different than meeting and greeting and being a hostess. So I think if you're going into physical therapy today, and today you have a chance to have a clinic of your choice, practicing as you wish with all the free will you have, and all you have to have is DPTs, PTAs, and techs, and you can outsource your admin, that makes it extremely easy for people today as opposed to before. You got technology. Look at Prompt. Look what the EMR system can do. Look what you guys have integrated in just 7 years. It's amazing. My notes are done as I walk out of the room. You got, transcribed dictation happening as I'm talking to people. So I think when you take everything into account, automation, AI, innovation, specialization, outsource, and, do what you do best and outsource the rest, all that combined makes it super, super simple. As long as you have the right mindset going into it, otherwise you could be a victim of your own circumstances.
Wow, that's a great way to look at it and a point of view. The opportunity is there. You have more resources than ever, and so it really is a good time to, if you want that and you're eager for it, to start your own practice. But you mentioned something really important, which is mindset.
Yep.
So what is the mindset shift that you need to make being an employee to an employer? And really, if you want to take that leap, what is the mindset shift that needs to happen to become a...
Yeah, that's a great question. So the mind shift is, I would say there's a couple ways to look at it, right? And I think you've experienced this in your own profession, knowing you and being friends. You've been an entrepreneur within an entrepreneurial business, and you've probably done it multiple times from the history that I know of you. And that's a huge win. I mean, I can go from employee being told when to come to work, when to go home, when I can take a break, when I can take a vacation, when I can take a lunch, and somebody tell me how much money I can make, which for some people that's totally okay. But then there's people like yourself who said, I'm engineered for a little bit more self-driven, self-independence. I'm not so sure that ceiling is how high my income should be. I think it could be a higher ceiling. And you've made yourself into an entrepreneur within an entrepreneurial clinic. So as a physical therapist who wants to create my own entrepreneurial clinic, shouldn't I develop an employment ladder that allows people to have that freedom of opportunity within the umbrella of what I created? So now both of us are winning, right? Both of us are not limited and not restricted. Going back to the mindset of going from employee to employer, I think a lot of people are leaving that employee mindset of I'm coming to work and exchanging time for money. And they're saying, hey, look, we had a pandemic some time ago, you might remember. And there was a lot of controlling things that happened, and people felt like this heat of control. And I know for myself, I sold my house and moved on a 26-acre farm with 24 chickens. And I'm like, I want to live free. I want some freedom. And so a lot of people now are doing their own thing. A lot of people are their own entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs because of the freedom, because of the sense of liberation that they can have for themselves, and they can make their own tomorrow. And so I think that's the mindset I'm really after. Like, what is that for you? As a matter of fact, the first question I ask people who want to go into private practice, I say, why? What's your ideal scene? What is it you're trying to achieve? If you can't paint that picture with your eyes closed, if you can't envision it, you can't paint it. So that's a big question. I know that's a long answer for a short question, but.
Yeah, I love it though. I love it. And I love the thinking and the way to be able to picture it and envision it for it to happen. Mm-hmm. Now, from that perspective as well, a lot of people don't have the coaching, or they may not have the resources yet that they built in where they were currently working. So what do you recommend in terms of what different courses they should take, what different books they should read, or any resources that they should do to set themselves up to be a startup entrepreneur?
Good. I think if you're going to be successful in opening up a plumbing company, then you should be a good plumber. I think you should start off knowing your craft and knowing your trade and knowing the ins and outs, do's and don'ts, ups and downs before you venture into it. I often say, like, here's my advice to everybody who's watching. Try to get educated to the extent that you know what you need to know before you need to know it. Because if I made you a nursing student, I put you on the 4th floor, I'm like, well, it's nursing 101, and today's your first day with these 24 patients, and we're just going to teach as we go. you would freak out. So if someone's going to go into private practice, let's just look at the numbers. It's going to cost you less than a Tesla, Plaid. So something around $100,000, $150,000 on average to get open. Your only real concern isn't the amount of capital you're spending, but the cash flow that you're going to make from that capital. So you need to then run a pro forma. So you should learn how to do that and understand what my cost center, what's bumped up against my income centers, and what's that margin going to be to break even. We pretty much know it's about 45 to 55 visits a week will be break even just about anywhere you are in the country. So you can kind of move forward from there. But specifically, some people get a little nervous and they'll go back and get their MBA. Not a fan. I think you're spending a lot of time on, macroeconomics, microeconomics. None of it's going to help you at all. But just knowing, and I'll end on the financial side because I think you really have to understand finances. Know that when you go into business, it's not like how you run your house. You and I don't want to ever spend more than we make in our house. But in business, I'll borrow money, and as long as my cash flow margins are covering it, I'm going to build my business on the borrowed money. Cash is king, and I'm going to keep reserves on that. That's what stresses most people out. They don't quite know where to go for the financing, how to manage the financing, and how to get break even in 6 months. That's a real secret to success right there.
A lot of follow-up questions for you on that, but I'll start with the one where you said it's about 150 to start up. So do you borrow, or do you, where do you get that cash from, and what do you recommend? A loan, family, friends, where do you get that from?
And those are all the things that are on the buffet. Hey, I can go to mom and dad, I can go to friends, I can get partners, I can take money out of the bank, maybe I have an inheritance, or I can go get a loan. And if I go get a loan, is it an SBA 7A? Is it a micro loan? Is it a commercial loan? It really depends on the period of time. That advice has to pivot and shift depending on the economic times. Currently, in this year, most owners that I see are doing much better with commercial loans. SBA loans used to be the thing. 5-6 years ago, everybody was getting SBA loans. If you look up on the SBA website, it even says they're not for startup. They're for people who have a cash flow, that people have some work history. I then went and Googled banks for startups. And even when I Googled the banks for startups, 2 out of 10 said no cash flow history required. So you really have to shop. I recommend that a lot. I don't like to mix family and friends in with business. I think that's a little bit of a risk. I think you should hang on to cash that you have. People are like, oh, well, it's interest free. Well, not really, because when it's gone, it's gone. If something is really happening in your business in the early years, you have that cash to shore yourself up. So I think that's the most secure way to do it. A nice commercial loan, as long as the terms and conditions are favorable. And always make sure you have a line of credit, which you can pull from your house. You can have a HELOC, let that sit on the side as your backup if you need it. And last thing I'll say about that is I'm not a fan of partners. I think there are some partnerships that work really, really well, and I'm not going to put that down. But for the most part, you're seeking a partner because you're risk adverse on something, typically. Something you don't feel like you can quite handle all yourself. And I often say, look, I've been married 33 years, and I can tell you that hasn't always been easy. And then you have a partner, and it's like 2 marriages in one household. You have all the same dynamics. So I usually try to encourage people, get the knowledge, get the training, get a coach, so you have somebody to bounce things off of. You have a soundboard, and then you'll be fine. You'll do quite well on your own.
I like that point about getting a coach and having that person to bounce off of because you have not done it before. So I think that's a great point. And you did say it's okay to actually have more money that you borrow or so forth in the beginning to start up and then your cash flow. So with that, what do you recommend as the absolute necessities that you need to start up from a technology perspective or just in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we have a thing on our website called PT in a Box, and you guys have a startup thing. There is a certain amount of technology and equipment and supplies that you absolutely need to get off the ground. And bootstrapping it isn't good either. So I've had people open up clinics and they're $300,000 in debt day one. Not a good idea. I had somebody open up a clinic on 3 credit cards. They maxed out one $10,000, rolled it forward to another one, cash on card, and they did it 2 times over and they got their clinic up and running. Don't recommend either one of those. I think if you're at about 150,000 and if the space that you're looking at is fairly well built out, let's say it's an old chiropractor office, podiatry office, or an old PT office, you're not going to spend much on build out at all. Build out is what's going to eat up your capital. So you should look toward the landlord contributing TIs, tenant improvements, to help you with the build out, or at least give you 3 to 6 months rent abatement where you're not paying rent for the first 3 to 6 months. So I would go there. Technology wise, you absolutely have to have some piece, in my mind, my opinion, some piece of an industry disruptor in terms of a clinical piece of equipment, whether it be the newbie e-stim or dry needling or red light laser or red light therapy or cold water, something that's gonna, rock the environment a little bit, make you a little bit of a differentiator. And then administratively, you need a lot of technology. You need a robust EMR system, which many people watching this podcast already know about. You need AI infused into it. You need automation. Auto billing, auto posting. We need to, at the end of the day, open up a clinic, no matter, I think it does matter, square footage wise, typically 1,200 to 2,400 square feet is a sweet spot. Open up a clinic in that range with as few number of people on your payroll as you possibly can do it. Keep that payroll down. It's your biggest financial burden, and it's your biggest management time consumer. It's going to consume most of your time in management. So having the digital technology like we have here in Prompt, and having a good piece of digital advanced technology, HRV, newbie, stuff like that out on the floor, you got the best of both worlds.
Great. And I love that about identifying yourself and having some clinical piece that identifies you, but then also putting the technology infrastructure in place to be able to scale, because you should always be thinking long-term as well. Now, you also mentioned that you should do it with as little amount of people as possible. So when do you recommend adding that first person, whether it be a front desk, whether it be another therapist? Where do you get to as you start to grow to add that next piece on?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at MEG Academy, we have a whole web-based platform for training startups and specific startup programs. And then we have a full master's curriculum for people who have already been in business. They want to open up 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 offices. There's something in there that we've constructed called the complement. And the hiring complement literally tells us who do we start with and when do we hire and who do we hire and what order do we hire them based on the numbers, not based on anything other than the numbers. And what you'll find is the numbers I'm speaking of are the revenue numbers and the visit numbers, the volume. So it's the patient volume and the revenue, and you track that. And so normally it goes, PT owner with an administrative person to help me get off the ground. Part-time works into full-time. I already know about 45 to 50 visits a week on the national average of about $83 a visit is going to be break even. Once I start ramping that up, the very next person I want to hire, believe it or not, is another therapist. I want to hire another therapist, because not a PTA, not a tech. We want to hire another therapist, because what's going to happen is that therapist walks in the door. I take my caseload where I'm overburdened now. I'm doing 60, 65 visits a week, let's say. I'm going to be able to dump almost all that caseload on the incoming therapist. About 35% will stay with me. They won't move. The rest will go there. And that person is literally 2 weeks away from break even because they took that caseload. Now, surely I'm not seeing the numbers that I would see, but now all evals come to this person. This person ramps up because they're on my payroll. I am the owner. I can pay myself distribution or pay, so I can play a little bit more with that. Get this person up to 85% efficiency, ramp them back up, and then I can start taking the evals again. And I just do it again. The next person who comes in should be more like a tech, somebody who's going to actually help support. And they're going to be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife, float to the front, float to the back. And then I can get my PTA. My golden rule of thumb is 2 PTs to 1 PTA. That is the secret ratio, and that'll keep it very viable. And now I'm not feeling like I'm doing eval. I'm feeding this PTA all day, every week. You don't want to feel like that. That's not why we went to school.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I like that algorithm. I like that process and procedure. And just like you said, you kind of have to have those processes before you start to add those different individuals and people. So what processes, what kind of different pieces should you put into place before hiring those people as well?
Yeah, that's there's so many good answers to these questions. First of all, I think, like we were talking earlier, so let's say you want to open up your doors. So let's just start. My phone usually rings when somebody's been an employee, they're a clinical director, they've been treating, and I recommend you treat for at least 2 years. So you get at least 2 years of clinical under your belt. my phone rings, they want to open their door. I say, I'm happy to plug and play and help you open up. It's a 27-step process. And as long as you're going to open in the next 6 to 18 months, it's the perfect window of time, not too quick, not too far out. What do you need in place? You're going to need to know how to incorporate, and then you're going to need to know how to use a software for your accounting, such as QuickBooks. Then you're going to need to know which is the best EMR with the right balance of automation and AI tools for your advantage. So that's simple. You don't have to think too hard about it. And then once you start getting into practice, program. You have to program out everything. You need standard operating procedures, SOPs. We can't go off a whim. You can't pivot and flex because of the personalities or the people you have. You have to have standard operating procedures across the board. A policy and procedure manual, more now than ever before. There's so much liability and litigation out there in the whole wide bad world. We don't want any of that in our office. So we have to live by our principles. Pay for performance model, absolute must. You can't afford therapists today. I had a call 2 weeks ago, and the challenge that I was confronted with was the therapist owner was saying, I can't hire a PTA in my market for under $65 an hour. Yeah, that was the challenge. And so I see everything in between. I have offices that are averaging $61 a visit. I have offices averaging $140 a visit. So without these SOPs, without policies and procedures, without pay for performance model, without stats, hats, metrics, and products identified that you're running on a 3-week trend, you're the effect of everything you create. And you'll wonder, my head's spinning and where do I go?
Wow.
Feels.
Wow. That's that's crazy because that is happening. And it is really hard to hire PTs and PTAs, just people in general. So it's important to put those those procedures in place and be able to set that ground running and really get your culture as well.
Yeah. And, we were talking earlier in your previous employment, you guys ran by the numbers. You guys knew your numbers. Management by statistics. It's not management by personality. Oh, Olivia's so nice. She laughs at my jokes or she buys me Krispy Kremes. She's my favorite. You can't run a practice or a business or a group or an organization any way like that. It has to be management by statistics, which is why pay for performance works so well.
Yeah. Now, what is the characteristic of people who've been really successful in starting their own practice and growing? What would you say is the overall general characteristic or that you see is in them to really make them successful?
Few things. Number one, they're not risk adverse. If you're risk adverse, don't do it. You're better off being an entrepreneur, which is great. It's fun. I keep going back to our other conversations, but you are amazing at developing all kinds of amazing things. If I don't want to evaluate just going off of our conversation, when you've been put in an environment that is supportive in nature and they cut you loose, you create all kinds of amazing things. And I think as an employer, people watching this, you should look for that talent. You should look for that person who you're like, you want to start the women's health program here? I'm going to give you 5% of the revenue that comes in with that. That's net revenue, net expenses. Why not, right? You want to start an aftercare program? Great. Let's do a fee split arrangement on that. Be a little creative, right? No, sometimes people are watching or listening to this saying, yeah, that all sounds great, Brian. You're talking about the talent, but how do I get the talent to sit here next to me? Well, I don't know. Sometimes you need to do a sign-on bonus, or maybe sometimes you need to do some sort of incentive plan. Why don't you do crypto? I'll buy you Bitcoin. Why would I give you like a annual bonus of $3,000 come Christmas? That $3,000 is only worth $3,000. Well, with inflation, it's probably worth less even when I give it to you. But if I give you the equivalency of $3,000 in Bitcoin and you put that in your account, who knows? A year from now, it could be worth $9,000. Or I had somebody say, I kind of gave them the idea. I said, you live in this rural part of America and you need people who want to buy and die and live in this neighborhood and raise a family here because this is where you live. Pay a point down on their mortgage. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, why am I giving them a cash check? Let them come here, tell them to sign a 5-year agreement. They sign a 5-year deal. You'll pay a point on their mortgage if they're going to buy a house. Let them test it out for a year and then they can test the waters. And it's a gift we'll never stop giving, right? Just be like out of the box thinking. I think that's what 2025 is all about. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think the characteristics are good communicator, high degree of confront, don't be risk adverse, and above all else, spot the reality that you can't manage over disagreement. If you can't bring about agreement in those that you know, like, and trust around you, then you're working with the wrong people.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot in the answer, and I love it. And I think those are great points. Especially, you can't be risk adverse. You've really got to take that jump, that leap of faith, and own it yourself. So I love that. Appreciate that insight.
And what if you fail? So you spent $100,000. So what if you fail? I mean, it's the cost of a car. I mean, really, you're going to be a therapist. You're going to get another $85,000 job easy. So I'm like, what are you really risking, really? I don't see we've been doing startups for well over 10 years. And I think minus one office in that 10 years, everybody's made it to their 30-year anniversary profitable. So I don't know. I maybe have a skewed opinion of it because of that.
And how quickly should you get to being profitable? Timeline. And if you do get there, how quickly can you see people scale to 1, 3, 5 clinics?
Yeah, that's great. So I think how quick or what's the timeline for break even very much dependent upon how much you spend on that build out, and also equally weighted on where you choose to open. Now, let's just talk about that for a quick second. Wherever you land, your rent should be 10% or less of your yearly GI or your monthly GI, whichever bill scale you want to measure. So get your rent under 10% of your total GI per month, okay? However, if you find a place that's open, it's a nice 1,500 square foot office, and a lot of the franchises and big corporates will find these places. They're right by Home Depot or right by a Publix grocery store, or right by a Wegmans. They're in a high visibility spot. Well, that rent may be $10 more per square foot than market ready somewhere else, but that $10 more per square foot is actually market dollars. So I don't take that into account on my rent. I say that part is the part that I'm saving on spending on marketing, because I've got 150,000 people walking by my window every single day. So we look at that. Now, moving into second office, third office. First, I always tell my owners, we have to understand the difference between scaling and expanding. You have to scale within your office. So if I have a 2,000 square foot office, I need to go around my office and count my production center. How many people could I have working simultaneously in the gym at the same time? How many different treatment tables or mats do I have? I add those up. I multiply it by how many patients can I see in an hour, by how many hours I'm open, and I take 35% of my equation, and that tells me per this space I just built, that is the volume that this can support. When I scale up to that volume, it's usually a window of about 20 to 30. When I'm in that window, then I'm looking for my next spot. And my next spot has to be within 30 minutes of this location so I can have some economy of scale. No closer, no 3 hours away. Somewhere between 30 minutes to 60 minutes, I try to stay right in that window so I'm not cannibalizing off my first location, but that I can actually start building a footprint. And the funny thing about a footprint, when you get 3 locations all within a market space, your multiple valuation just went up quite a bit.
That's great insight. I love that. And really, really helpful for someone who's evaluating, saying, okay, I'm ready now. I've scaled my clinic up, that I'm ready to jump on another one. So again, time frame of your most successful, how quickly have people done that?
Yeah. So just to finish on that, and I'll answer that, just like we want our therapists to week in and week out be 85% efficient, that production center formula tells me if my clinic's 85% efficient. I want to optimize my clinic 85% efficient and then do it again, and then do it again. I feel that if I historically look back over the last 20 years of doing this, we're typically break even within 3 to 6 months. Definitely want to be break even within 3 to 6 months. Typically want to scale to my second location within my first 3 years. And then after that, about every other year, for a normal family run, you and me kind of person. Somebody who's, like, this is all I'm going to do. No, I'm not married, no kids, no obligation. I don't even have a dog. Yeah, okay, you can open up a clinic every year. I mean, I see that too, and that's totally fine. But it all has to come back to what is your ideal scene. My ideal scene has always been, I want to eat organic. I want to work out. I want to have some peace time. I want to be able to meditate. I want to be able to exercise, and I want to have a happy life of financial stability with time flexibility. So I'm not going to throw out a clinic every year because that's just not going to align with my ideal scene. So I think hang on to your ideal scene with both hands and make the business support that. Don't do it the other way around.
Great. And you really brought up a very good point. So I'd love to ask you, what are the indicators of success? Not just KPIs, metrics, and financial. What are the indicators of successful startup or scaled clinic?
Yeah. I think that is so subjective, but in my opinion, I've always felt that I do what I do and I help who I help for the joy and pleasure of knowing, number one, if I can go to bed at night knowing that I've done something, said something, shared something, created something, and forevermore I could see that that's going to have a positive impact on another human being, I take a win. I mean, if my life just boiled down to that and that was all I was able to accomplish on a daily basis, I would live a happy life. And I would want for no more. But I created a business in the healthcare field to try and help masses of people. So for me, my degree of measurement has increased. So yes, I want to have not a number per se. I wouldn't say there's a number, but I want to have financial stability. I want to have a degree of financial stability that I feel like kids are good, my wife is okay, my retirement's okay, I can afford a hearing aid when I'm going to need it. I'm all right with that. But it doesn't mean anything if all this has been amassed, but I don't have time flexibility. So I think A plus B equals my ultimate scene, which is freedom. And I think for me, my definition of freedom is when I have enough financial stability that I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from or how I'm going to retire. And I have the time flexibility to enjoy it with the people that I love in my life, friends and family and my peers. To me, it's not worth it if I have all the money I could possibly want, but I don't have a minute to spend it. Or I have all the time in the world to sit on my porch and drink a Schmidt malt liquor, but I don't have a dollar to get me to the movies. I wouldn't be happy in either one of those. So maybe that'll resonate with the audience. I don't know. But it does have to be something self-driven, self-determined.
Perfect. And that's great. Financial freedom and also being able to run the clinic you want to run and provide the quality of care that you even set out to do. I know a lot of therapists want to go off on their own because they want to create that culture and that quality of care. So we'd love to know from that perspective too, how do you advise or coach startups or practice owners to really judge the quality of care they're giving too?
Yeah. So answering that question and the early one in the frame of reference from a practice owner within private practice, I think one of the most common things practice owners will tell me is, I did this because I don't want to be second to anyone in my community. And I'm like, oh, well, how do you know that? Well, it's based on my brand. Well, what does the definition of brand, what's that definition to you? It's what do people think about your business, your practice when you're not around? What do people say about it when you're not there? I know one of the proudest days of my life was standing in the checkout line at the grocery store and having two senior citizen women, Medicare women, talk about her husband's coming home and he had a total hip and he needs physical therapy. And the woman didn't even know the other woman. And she's like, well, I know this clinic. It's Cypress Creek Therapy. It might be a wait to get in there, but you can't possibly imagine that you would be treated any better than there. And I'm standing there covering up my Cypress Creek Therapy logo because I didn't want them to see that it was me and I owned the place. But it was like, okay, I felt like I arrived. When people have that to say about something you built, that you built with your own two hands, and that you've had that much of an influence that the people in the community are recommending the other people, that makes me think of, for a startup owner, like with a restaurant, same thing with a clinic. The first 100, I call it the magic 100. The first 100 patients you treat are going to make or break your clinic. Honest to goodness, that is what's going to be the do or die moment, because if the first 100 patients have an overwhelmingly positive experience, you just put your marketing jersey on every single one of them, and that's what's going to populate your clinic success from that day forward. So important. So that goes back to our question of success. Am I running a net promoter score of 9 or above on every single person who's leaving? Am I getting 75% or higher Google reviews from every patient who's leaving? Am I getting 3 success stories from start to finish, from eval to discharge on every single patient through their cycle of action within my clinic? To me, that's what it's all about. It's not about the mechanics. It's about the outcomes. It's about the results. It's about the impression. It's the fact that I have my patients leaving my clinic having achieved optimum health and willing to talk about it. That, to me, is the measurement of success.
Yeah, successful discharge, outcomes, NPS scores, and then being able to infuse that into every therapist that is now working for your brand and having that outcome scaled.
And it's not just the therapist today, right? I mean, physical therapy's changed a lot from when I got out of school in 92. It's my aftercare program, my personal fitness trainers, my I don't know, my Pilates instructor, my massage therapist, whoever I'm integrating my physical therapy care with, I would always bring somebody into every discharge visit. Well, I was normally my personal fitness trainer, and they were part of the discharge visit because then people could stay on our aftercare program or pay a monthly membership or whatever. But it's just giving more than they expect. That's what a blue diamond is about, right? It's above and beyond the normal.
Yeah. Now, for a lot of the listeners that want to not experience it themselves and just want to hear about it, what are the pitfalls people fall into the first year? What would you say are the, hey, I've seen this over and over, and this is probably what you want to avoid?
Very good question. It's still shocking to me that people go into business without a plan. You need a plan. You need a business strat plan. Where am I going to be in the end of the month, the end of the quarter, the end of the semi-annual? Where do I want to be at the end of the year? If I'm going to pull up to your house, Marla, and swing my car door open and say, hop in, the first question you're going to ask me is most likely, where are we going? Why would you get in the car with me if I don't tell you where we're going? Why don't I open up a private practice if I don't know where I'm going and I can't accurately articulate that to procure you to want to do it participate with me? So failure of having a plan, lack of transparency. Some people hold everything so dear and private. I'm like, transparency breeds trust. So getting that trait and characteristic, having the degree of confrontation. I don't want upsets, but I want you to have a good enough skill that you can tell me anything you need to tell me while remaining comfortable in your own skin when you do it. These are the soft personnel management skills that I train every owner on. A degree of confront. People respect that teacher that was disciplined, not the one that was a dictator, the one that was disciplined, the one that was all casual and anything goes, no respect, right? You can't run your clinic like that. These people, look, if you think you're going to make everybody happy by saying yes to everything, you have 13 children, something like that? I don't know. So I don't have no idea how many children. It's just a joke. I've got 2 kids. Let's say I've raised my daughters and I said, while they were 8 and under, I said yes to everything for a month. Yes, you can have chocolate cake for dinner. Yes, you can go to bed whenever you want. Yes, you can watch YouTube. My house is going to be chaos at the end of the month. I still see owners to this day trying to propitiate to their staff members every whim and wham that they want. You can't run a practice like that. So that degree of confront. And then lastly, communication skills. The art of communication of how to bring about agreement. The senior most important thing, no matter whether you run GM or you run your 1,500 square foot office, is you're going to do it with people around you. And you can't manage over disagreement. You just can't manage over disagreement. You have to find a way to bring about agreement. And if you can't keep that person. That goes back to confront. Can't do it with the wrong people, that's for sure.
Plan, discipline, communication, confront, and just having that overall ability to have people want to be part of what you're doing, want to buy in and want to be just as invested as you.
It's kind of like when my kids are like, why did you marry mom, dad? I'm like, dating stopped when I met the woman that if I make her laugh and smile, it gave me more fulfillment than anything she could give me in return. So when you run a business and you get more joy and pleasure out of giving than receiving, whether it be money, patient visits, new patient, whatever, you get just more enjoyment out of what you're giving to the community and giving to your patients and giving to your staff. That fulfills you. You're in the right spot.
Yeah, great. And now I know that AI and technology is a hot topic, so would love to know what pieces as a brand new startup owner or as a scaling, what parts of technology and AI should you use, A, to build your business, and B, to also even be your mentor, right? Like, what do you see as a must-have this day and age that was probably a lot different than back when you started yours?
Back when I started mine, the EMR system was just for me to send out claims. I mean, that's all I did. And I had to have a separate clearinghouse. So technology, I wouldn't consider an EMR software program out there today that's not an all-in-one. Number one, has to do everything: schedule, management, stats, like prediction health, like the dictation portion of it. It's just a must-have. Like, why would I do my notes? I'm not going to stay up till 10 o'clock at night doing notes anymore. That degree of automation has to happen. And what you know so well, online scheduling, patient-driven autonomy. How much more autonomy? Look, if I need to get my car oil changed, I call anybody. I just go online and book my appointment, right? This is the world we live in, convenience. So I look at technology, I look at AI that's going to give me the human conveniences that I need to complete an operation. I don't look to automation and AI to address something for me. I still want my therapist hands-on. I still want to meet my doctor. I still want to talk to my mechanic, right? So for me personally, I still want that human engagement on the execution of the application of that function, but I want the assistance. I want the facilitation. I want the AI automation to help facilitate a better quality of that delivery from the human being. And I think, obviously, here at Prompt, you guys put a large emphasis on doing that, and you do it very well. So I think that's much appreciated in our PT space for sure. But we have to have it clinically too, whether it be, underwater treadmills or, some of the digital technologies we've already talked about, there's just PEMF and HRV and all these cool things that are out there now. I think we have to think from an innovative mindset. And I'm sure you have ideas on that too, but also think outside the box. I mean, there's 5 business models. We could be mobile PT, we could be cash-based, we could be a hybrid, we get in-network, out-of-network, there's different things we can do. So you can do a mixture of that. So it's just an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be a therapist. I always say being a physical therapist is the second best profession in this whole wide world. It's second to a professional baseball player. You just can't be, I don't even play in the rain, I don't have to hit anybody. I don't even, they give me a uniform. I mean, it's a great profession, but physical therapy is definitely the second.
I hope all of our listeners agree with you on that. And I would also take the point of the AI as well is it could also be your assistant. I know I just watched this phenomenal podcast from Harvard Business Review was how to create an AI assistant just using a free ChatGPT or cloud. And you really can create an AI assistant and ask it questions, and it can be your mentor. It can help you create those business plans. And that's really, it's a great alternative too. If you've got some questions and you don't have anyone to ask, now don't be fully reliant on AI, but I do think it's a nice avenue to complement some of the subsets that maybe people out there don't know yet and are learning. So always a good way, like we said, it should be augmented and assisted in your infrastructure and also in your learning and your growth as well.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I think the key word in that whole statement is assist. In one form or another, I think automation and AI and digitalization of so much technology that's floating there around us, use it and use it well and use it wisely to assist. I don't allow any employee in my company to use AI to construct anything on its own. I have no problem if they construct an email and they hit that polish button and you wrote the email, and now it's just helping assist you in the level of communication that you want and the way you want it, formality or whatever, but not to construct it for you where you don't have to think. And you're like, yep, copy, paste. I'm not a fan of that. Maybe other people love that, but I just feel like it's disingenuous. So I want to still have that human participation. I like the assist.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, I think.
So give us your top 5 tips of personal growth as a founder.
I think as human beings, we are intrinsically better off together. And so my first tip is put a lot of thought and energy into bonding with somebody in your life in some way, shape, form, or fashion, whomever that may be. I just think it allows us to be more of ourselves when we can give to another human being. So that's just my opinion there. Number 2, gratefulness. I make a point every single day for my personal growth to think of 5 things I'm grateful for. Sometimes it's just my 24 chickens, sometimes it's the blue skies and the Blue Ridge Mountains that I live in. But it's important to stop and remind myself that I'm not the center of any, really. I'm really just a person who's contributing to everything else that's around me. And I try to lean into that. As a personal growth, I think our heart is the senior feature of my entire humanity. And so I try to meditate, if not every day, at least every other day. I try to resonate with deep breathing to slow myself down. I tend to be kind of high energy in some ways, I've been told. I tend to speak fast at times. And so sometimes I can run away with myself and just be like, it's all about that. But life isn't about that. The best things in my life are when personally I can take a moment and come at peace with myself and really inhale everything that I'm immerse myself in my environment, and that I'm actually able to, like for personal growth, I want to be able to interpret or read the room, like read the people, read the dynamics, read like what does this setup tell me, and what can I do to contribute to it? I think a lot of people who just can't get outside their own head, they just barrel through. And I think people feel that. So rather than being so evaluative, I really reflect away from being evaluative, and I try to be, it's kind of an old made up British term. It's called obnose. And it means I strive hard to observe the obvious. I try to obnose. And I think when you're living a life and you try to train yourself to that, I think people feel that energy from you. I think they feel that beingness, and they want to be around and contribute to whatever you're into. And my last little tip on that is to hold myself in check. I have a little stat sheet that I have on my phone in my notes section, and I keep a stat for myself. Each Sunday, I review my phone, and I keep a statistic on how many times that I acknowledge somebody for who they are as a person, whatever it is. Marla, you have beautiful hair, or Marla, that was really nice of you to do that. Thank you for lunch, things like that. Acknowledge you for who you are. That's acknowledgement. But do I validate people for what they do and what they bring to the table and what they've created or what they've done? Like, I just saw you over that with that patient. You did plyometrics at a time. I would have, well done, good intervention, great job. And I just put a little check mark there. So I hold myself, because at the end of the day, the most important things in our life we measure, right? We all have a scale in our home. We measure our body weight. Sometimes we measure our BMI. Sometimes we check our bank account balance. Sometimes our credit score, our grades in school. The things that are most important in our life we'll measure. So I need to measure the things that are most important to me. And that's how many acknowledgments and how many validations I can give to others.
Oh, wow. I love that. Taking that back. Need a little more meditation in my lifestyle, probably.
It's not long.
And what are your top 5 professional success tips as a founder?
Yes. Read, and read some more. There's so many gems and such a wealth of knowledge out there if you just take time to absorb it. And when I mean read, I mean audiobooks for Brian. I am audiobook king. I'm in 3 books right now. I try to get through 50 a year. So definitely expose yourself to that. Of course, YouTube and all that, but stay away from the news. Professional tips, knowledge is so important, but it's what you can do with it. So it's education, duplication, application. And that's what I did with MEG Academy. I took all my years of traveling and all my experience being practiced the year and selling when I was 38 and getting back in and doing it again to put together a platform where one can get educated, and then they take a quiz or a test or a role play and they have to duplicate it. And then they have to apprentice with me as their live coach for free, no cost, to apply what they've learned. So finding that kind of space or environment where you're getting educated, duplicating it, making sure you've read it, and you can actually apply it. It doesn't matter if I give you, it doesn't matter if I have the car keys to a super Corvette and I give it to an 8-year-old. You're not ready to apply that. That's the best tool, but not in the hands of an 8-year-old. It's best in your hands, right? So give you that Ferrari and you're going to make the most of it because you're educated, you have knowledge, you duplicate what comes along with that responsibility, and you can apply it. So read, YouTube, education, duplication, application. And then probably the very most important tip for professional success as an owner is just to literally know that you have to always be creating the future. You have to outcreate yesterday. You have to be creating for the future. You can't coast. You can't say this is good enough or I'm happy with what I've got. Everything around you accelerates. Everything costs more. You have to outcreate yesterday and have a plan and have a scaled, measurable way to do it. I think too many owners just keep doing what they're doing and they just keep running on the treadmill and think it's going to be heydays forever. And it's not. It doesn't work like that.
What I hear from you is continue to invest in yourself. You can never invest enough in yourself.
Yeah.
Any good books or what you said, read? Any like 1 or 2 that you can give us of this really was monumental to me?
So in terms of books, the book that I'm reading right now that I absolutely love is a one-page marketing plan. Fabulous book. I love that. A book I recently finished was How to Live Like a Monk, Shetty's book. Excellent book. There's another book, The 45-Day Plan. It's about transitioning and what the first 45 days are when you leave one position to another. Absolutely love that book. And I'm totally into quantum physics and quantum shift. And I'm into the whole, you make your reality. And so Dr. Joe Dispenza, I'm in his one book right now. I can't recall the title, but he's got several. And I'm just so fascinated by the whole physics of like how we can make our whole existence, our whole physical universe the way we want it is what we can envision. So I try to balance myself between tech and self, growth books, but also, challenge myself in like leadership books as well. So, try to balance it around.
I've got some new books to add to my reading list. Very excited. And what would you say, just in conclusion, if you were speaking to somebody who has dreams and aspirations of being a clinic owner, maybe afraid to take that step, what's your one takeaway or your last bit of tips for them?
I think we can all look at our life and know that we've had some mentor in our life some way or another. It's been our grandparents, our grandmother, my mom, my dad, somebody, a brother, a sister, an uncle. And what does that mean? That means that through this person's education and their life experience that is out in front of you, that predates you, that's in advance of where you are, you're the benefactor if you're willing to listen. You're the benefactor if you're willing to contribute to that relationship and participate. So I think my final message would be, don't go through life in starting a business or starting a career or starting a family or starting a relationship thinking you got to go it alone. This is a two-terminal universe the way I see it. I think the best advice I can give people is find that person in your life, friend, family, neighbor, who you know, like, and trust, and who you can appreciate the value that they're providing you and that you can give back in equal magnitude, because it's that relationship, that coach, that mentor. I've tried to be that for as many people as I can. I've tried to create a company that does that. Even with our billing, if my billing staff sees your numbers go flat, they call the coaching department and says, one of my clients, their numbers haven't grown in the last 3 months. They're doing the same. You want to give them a call? I'm like, sure, put them on my list. Let's call them. It's just like, it's above and beyond just keystroking. We've met those people. And for me, it was my dear grandfather who just was, just the salt of the earth. He was the friendliest person in planet Earth that I grew up under. And I just learned that that's what it's all about. So whatever you're trying to do, whatever conveyor belt you're on, whatever mountain you're climbing, just know it's always better with another.
So it's okay to take risks. It's important to invest in yourself. And it's good to find and ask for help in the mentors, the coaches. You don't know everything. And if you want to start that clinic, go do it and find those people you trust to help you along the way.
That's right. I say it all the time. I know I don't know everything there is to know about this, but I'm never going to stop trying.
Love it. Well, Brian, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. This has been phenomenal. And I hope that we've inspired some clinicians to go out there, start their own business. And of course, call you if they need any help.
I'm here. I'm happy to help. I'm just happy to be here in your wonderful state of Olivia and setting this all up. And for the listeners, I hope you guys truly appreciate the professionalism and the effort that goes in here, because you can't find that everywhere. So I hope this was beneficial to people to actually get out there and do something with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marla.